The Vampire Who Refused to Die. The story of Nosferatu. What if I told you that one of the most terrifying and influential horror films ever made was never meant to exist? That it was a phantom born in rebellion, hunted down by lawyers and sentenced to be burned from history? A film whose every surviving copy is a ghost, a refugee from a legal death sentence. This is the unbelievable true story of Nosferatu, a symphony of horror. A 1922 silent masterpiece that not only defined the vampire on screen, but had to cheat death itself to do so. In this golden flicker documentary, we will unearth the illegal origins of this cinematic nightmare, meet the mysterious actor rumored to be a real vampire, and trace its undying legacy through a century of cinema. For over 100 years, the chilling silhouette of Count Orlok has haunted our collective nightmares. Released in 1922, F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu was a product of a wounded, traumatized Germany. In the fragile Weimar Republic that rose from the ashes of World War I, the artistic movement known as German Expressionism sought to portray a world distorted by anxiety, madness, and deep societal fears, and no film captured that feeling better than this one. Nosferatu did not emerge in a vacuum. Earlier films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920, had already introduced audiences to warped sets, twisted psychology, and a dreamlike horror that mirrored the instability of the age. Murnau built on this tradition, pushing it into darker and more supernatural territory. It wasn't just a movie. It was a nation's fever dream put on celluloid, a raw nerve exposed on screen. Do you remember the first time you saw that eerie, rat-like creature ascend the stairs, his shadow moving with a malevolent life of its own? That image is burned into the very soul of cinema. But the story of how it got there is even shocking than the film itself. Our story begins not in a Gothic castle, but with a strange and ambitious new film studio, Prana Film. Founded in 1921 by artist, producer, and occultist Albin Grau, Prana was created with the sole purpose of producing films about the supernatural and the arcane. Grau's own fascination with the occult was the driving force of the studio. For his first major project, he was possessed by a single vision: bringing Bram Stoker's legendary novel, Dracula, to the screen. There was just one insurmountable problem: he couldn't afford the rights. Stoker's widow, Florence, guarded the copyright to her late husband's work with an iron will. Florence Stoker, however, was not merely obstructing. She was fighting to protect the literary and financial legacy of her husband, for whom the novel remained a vital source of income after his death. But Grau was not a man easily deterred. In a move of audacious cinematic piracy, he and his team decided to simply make the film anyway. Their strategy was one of cosmetic concealment: change the names, alter the locations, and tweak a few plot details, hoping the essence would shine through without attracting legal fire. And so the aristocratic Count Dracula was reborn as the pestilential Count Orlok. The hero Jonathan Harker became the naive Thomas Hutter. His beloved Mina morphed into Ellen. The bustling metropolis of London was swapped for the quaint fictional German port city of Wisborg. The story was set in 1838 to further distance it from the Victorian source material. Even the film's title was a piece of misdirection. They seized upon the word Nosferatu, mistakenly believing it to be an ancient Romanian word for vampire, a word whose origin is in fact obscure and controversial. Most scholars trace it back to Emily Gerard's Transylvanian Superstitions, 1885, where it may have been a misinterpretation of Greek Nosferatu, plague-bearer, or of Romanian Necuratul, the accursed. While not a genuine word in Romanian, it entered folklore precisely through literature and cinema, becoming part of vampire mythology thanks to Stoker and Murnau. The entire production was built on a foundation of artistic passion, occult fascination, and brazen legal defiance. They were creating a masterpiece on stolen ground. Forging a monster. With the illegal script in hand, Prana Film hired a director who could translate their nightmare into reality, the visionary Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. A master of German expressionism, Murnau understood that the world of Nosferatu needed to feel psychologically warped. He aimed to create a visual landscape that was as sick and twisted as the monster inhabiting it. Instead of confining his vision to studio sets, Murnau took his crew to real locations, letting the natural world become a canvas for his distorted reality. The quaint German cities of Wismar and Lübeck, with their Gothic architecture, became the haunted Wisborg. More than a century later, many of these locations, including the bizarre salt warehouses that served as Orlok's new home, still stand as silent monuments to the film's production. For the Transylvanian exteriors, the crew traveled to the breathtaking Orava Castle in northern Slovakia, its imposing structure becoming the perfect physical embodiment of Orlok's ancient evil. Murnau used the camera like a painter's brush. He framed characters in doorways, under arches, and through gates, visually trapping them in the architecture of their own dread. He employed clever practical effects that still feel unnerving today. Stop motion for Orlok's coffin loading itself onto a carriage, and fast motion for his unnaturally swift predatory movements. He even tinted the film stock, sepia for day, pink for sunset, and a chilling spectral blue for night, to manipulate the audience's emotions in an era without dialogue. But every monster movie needs a monster, and for Count Orlok, Murnau found an actor as enigmatic and unsettling as the role itself. Max Schreck. Schreck, whose last name literally means fright or terror in German, was an accomplished but obscure stage actor. Towering at 6'3", with a gaunt frame and unnerving features, he was the perfect canvas for Murnau's monster. His performance was so deeply committed, so utterly inhuman, that it sparked a persistent rumor that followed the film for decades, that Max Schreck wasn't an actor at all, but a real vampire hired by Murnau for ultimate authenticity. A myth often repeated claims that he blinks only once in the entire film. In truth, he does blink a handful of times, but so rarely and unnervingly that the impression he gives is of an almost inhuman stillness. This eerie quality fueled the legend and later inspired the entire premise of the 2000 film Shadow of the Vampire. The truth is, Schreck's transformation was a triumph of performance and makeup. His bald head, pointed ears, long claw-like fingers, and most importantly, his teeth, created a vampire wholly separate from its literary origins. The Vampire's Teeth, a tale of two monsters. Let's look closer at those teeth. In Stoker's novel, Dracula is described with sharp white canine teeth, the two iconic fangs we now universally associate with vampires. They are the weapons of a predator. Yes, but one aristocratic, almost elegant one. Nosferatu violently rejected this. Count Orlok's teeth are not his canines. They are his front incisors, sharpened to points, giving him a grotesque, rodent-like appearance. They looked less like fangs and more like the teeth of a rat. This was a deliberate and brilliant artistic choice. Orlok isn't a suave seducer wrapped in a cape. He's a walking plague. The film inextricably links him to rats, which pour from his coffins and bring the plague to Wisborg. He is the very manifestation of contagion, a connection deepened by the occult lore Grau and Murnau created for him, suggesting that Orlok was a creation of the demon Belial, a figure associated with pestilence in ancient texts. His bite is not a sensual, forbidden kiss on the neck. It's a grotesque, disease-spreading wound. This visual choice marks a crucial fork in the road for the cinematic vampire. While literature had already begun to explore the vampire as an alluring Byronic hero, starting with John Polidori's 1819 novella, The Vampire, Nosferatu firmly anchored its monster in the grotesque horror of ancient folklore. It was a creature of disease, shadow, and primordial fear, not a creature of dark romance. Sentenced to death. Nosferatu premiered in Berlin in March 1922 to an enthusiastic reception. It was an artistic triumph and a chilling success, but the shadow of Bram Stoker was long. Despite the name changes and altered plot, Florence Stoker heard about the unauthorized adaptation and immediately filed a lawsuit for copyright infringement. The legal battle was swift and decisive. Prana Film, having spent its entire budget on its one and only production, declared bankruptcy and couldn't even mount a proper defense. In 1925, the German court ruled in favor of the Stoker estate. The verdict was absolute and ruthless. All known prints and negatives of Nosferatu were to be seized and destroyed. Resurrection. But just like its titular monster, Nosferatu refused to stay in the grave. Before the court order could be fully executed, a few precious prints of the film had already been exported to other countries. These celluloid refugees, hidden away in archives in France, the UK, and the United States, escaped the flames. For years, the film existed only in these fragmented, second-generation, often poor-quality copies. The story of its full restoration is a cinematic miracle in itself. When film historians tried to piece together a definitive version, they faced a daunting puzzle. The original German intertitles were lost. Most surviving prints used the character names from Stoker's novel, a change made for American audiences to capitalize on the book's fame. Then, decades later, while searching through the State Film Archive of the former East Germany, restorers stumbled upon a forgotten print. It was believed to be of inferior quality, but when they unspooled it, they discovered the impossible. It contained the original German intertitles. This archival find became a Rosetta Stone for a lost masterpiece. This survival against all odds is what cements Nosferatu's place in history. A film condemned to death, resurrected by chance, and painstakingly restored by devoted cinephiles. An undying legacy. Freed from its grave, Nosferatu's influence spread like a shadow across the world of cinema. Its visual language, the stark lighting, the creeping shadows, the psychologically unsettling atmosphere, became the very blueprint for the horror genre. While Universal's 1931 Dracula with Bela Lugosi would popularize the charming, aristocratic vampire, its gothic mood and use of shadow owed a massive, undeniable debt to the German masterpiece that came before it. The film's power to provoke was immediate and lasting. Its horror was deemed so visceral and intense that it was banned in Sweden upon its release, a ban that shockingly remained in place for 50 years until 1972. Yet decades later, the Vatican would see past the horror to the artistry, selecting Nosferatu for its prestigious 45 film list in the art category. A film so terrifying it gets banned, yet so artistic it's celebrated by the church. That is the profound duality of Nosferatu. This power has compelled generations of filmmakers to revisit its shadows. In 1979, the legendary German director Werner Herzog, who called the original the greatest German film ever made, directed a hauntingly beautiful remake, Nosferatu the Vampire. Starring his volatile muse Klaus Kinski, Herzog's film was not just a remake, but an act of cultural reclamation, a German artist paying homage to a vital piece of his nation's cinematic heritage. Decades later, the film's production itself became the subject of metafiction, with the 2000 film Shadow of the Vampire, which took the old rumors about Max Schreck and spun them into a brilliant dark comedy about a director who literally casts a vampire to star in his film. The fascination continues into the 21st century, even in the independent scene. In 2023, director David Lee Fisher released Nosferatu, a symphony of horror. This unique project, starring the master of creature performance Doug Jones as Count Orlok, is a loving, scene-for-scene retelling that uses digital green screen to place new actors into the beautifully restored backgrounds of the original 1922 film, blending silent-era aesthetics with modern technology. And in late 2024, the cycle culminated once more with a major Hollywood production from director Robert Eggers. Known for his meticulous, atmospheric horror films like The Witch and The Lighthouse, Eggers brought his own vision to the myth, starring Bill Skarsgård in a physically transformative performance as Orlok. The fact that a century later, one of today's most acclaimed auteur directors felt compelled to retell this specific story proves that its themes of plague, paranoia, and foreign dread are as potent as ever. From an illegal act of creative passion to a masterpiece sentenced to burn, the story of Nosferatu is as dramatic as anything seen on screen. It is a testament to artistic rebellion, a celluloid ghost that refused to fade. It survived its own death to become immortal, proving that you can't kill a truly great idea or a truly great monster. It remains a symphony of horror, a chilling reminder that sometimes the deepest fears are born from the shadows of our own world.
If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribe to Golden Flicker for more untold stories from behind the scenes of Hollywood. Which film or actor's secret history do you want us to uncover in the next video? Let us know in the comments below.